across the world until now.
More than just business news, we're news for business people.
Welcome. You're watching Countdown on Bloomberg Went Live, India's first digital live streaming business news service. These are the top headlines that we're tracking at this hour. Markets recover from day's low and Bank Nifty is currently trading in the green, and you've got the Nifty trading above the mark of 10,100. India services PMI contracts in the month of November to come in at 3-month low. Bank of China is the latest lender to pull out of Adani's Carmichael Mines project. And Cyclone Oki heads towards Gujarat, expected to make landfall later tonight. The Prime Minister says situation is being constantly monitored.
Yeah, it's been a wet day in Mumbai for sure, and promises to be a wet day in Gujarat over the course of the next 24 odd hours. This is what the markets are doing off the day's low. There's a bit of a spike that has come in, I think led again by the Bank Nifty. If you pull up the Nifty Bank chart, the intraday Nifty Bank chart, you will see what I'm talking about. There's a big spike that has happened in the Nifty Bank in the session, and that's what's leading to this move that we're seeing on the index as well. Wonder if the mid caps and the small caps are participating, because all of this is happening in the last few minutes of trade. Bring up the Nifty mid cap and the Nifty small cap, and then bring up the market breadth charts as well. This is what the mid caps are doing. Yes, a bit of a move up, and the market breadth charts will also be interesting to see, because that's where you'll get to know if indeed there's a bit of a spurt in the breadth or not. Difficult to really see that in a matter of a few minutes, but yeah, well, after a really wide gap, though the gap still persists, the key will be whether or not we see an advanced decline ratio will be slightly better than the 1:2 in favor of the declines. This is arguably one of the worst market breadths that we've seen in a while, and the red has continued to dominate the screen. Though I must say that there are certain pockets. In the morning when we started off trade, not a single stock which was over 1% in the green. Now Bajaj Finance has bounced off from the consistent selling that we've seen. Reliance Industries bouncing off the 50-day moving average as well. Certain banks, State Bank of India, IndusInd, Yes Bank, I would presume these are the ones which are pulling the index up higher, so good going there. But IT is not participating. Wipro is down, Tech Mahindra is down about 1.5%. So that problem remains today. Bit of a musical chairs today. Banks are moving slightly higher, but IT names are giving way in trade. Certain individual names that I thought we should mark in the session today. I think results impact was seen in Sandur Manganese. So if you pull up that one, up 9%, continues to do well. So good start, or a good start and a good day of trade for Sandur Manganese today. The US Class 8 truck sales impact coming in on Bharat Forge for sure, which is up 3.5%. The others like Ramkrishna or MM Forgings really haven't done too well, but Bharat Forge is certainly doing very well for itself in the session today. New highs for stocks like Shankara, Buildcon, as well as Apex Frozen Foods, and it's been one amazing journey post-listing for both of these names. New highs also for Gillette India. You know, if you look at the FMCG space and the staple space in particular, this one is consistently moving up. So good going yet again for Gillette India. As also for Setco Automotive. Remember in yesterday's session, Setco Automotive had a good day. It's continuing that vein, about 7% higher. So this is a fresh high for Setco Automotive, fresh 52-week high for Setco. And last but not the least, just want to mark a couple of losers. As I said, it's not all hunky-dory. A lot of stocks in the red. I thought two stood out. One of them was Minda, one of them was Sonata Software. High-flying stocks, consistently on the up move today, off their highs and off by a margin from their highs as well. But what about the liquid space, Navneet?
Well, Neeraj, some positive ticks now seen, especially for Bank Nifty, which is now trading in the green. Remember, for majority of the session, Bank Nifty was trading below the mark of 25,000. And look at that, the recovery has just come in the last 15 to 20 minutes of trade. So some good news towards the closing. But look at Nifty, that's also recovered from its day's low, currently trading above the mark of 10,100. Remember, this was the other index for majority of the day. it was trading below the mark of 10,100. I just want to highlight Bank Nifty actually, Nifty was trading very close to its 100-day moving average, which stands at around 10,067, and the day's low was somewhere around that. So that's being protected. Bank Nifty, which breached the 50-day moving average in today's session, it has seen some bit of buying which has come in at lower levels for Bank Nifty, which is currently trading at day's high. Well, just remember the monetary policy is there, so ahead of that we are seeing some bit of adjustment coming about. Bank Nifty has also broken the trend of last 4 trading days, where we were seeing lower highs and lower lows, but not lower lows. So, but that's not the case now. That trend has just been broken in the last 15 to 20 minutes. Let's see if there can be any sort of follow-on buying which one can see on both the underlying indices. Just quickly, in terms of option strike, nothing's changed for Nifty. Call writing still continues for strikes like 10,100 and right till 10,400, and lower level strikes like 9,900 and 10,000 put strike in today's session have seen significant amount of open interest addition. 2 stocks I want to highlight. One of them is Hexaware, which is being very strong even in the weak market, like in the last 3 to 4 sessions. The stock's trading at its 52-week high. It's up on very high volumes in cash, and similar action has been seen on the future side. As you can see, the December futures open interest has risen nearly 32%, indicating there are heavy fresh long positions being created here. Bharat Forge is the other one. The counter is, however, up, but on the future side, no major action has been seen. Clearly, the volumes as compared to yesterday, if you compare the cash side, volumes have been higher. So watch out. It looks like that there is some delivery-based buying which is taking place in Bharat Forge, as the December futures have not seen any major build-up on the long side.
Interesting. Well, a lot of pain points there and in the markets today. Certain stocks losing out. We've spoken about a clutch of those. Let's get in Shrikant. He's head of institutional equities at Prabhudas Lilladher, joins us right now on the show. Tell us about what is it that clients at Prabhudas Lilladher have been doing in the recent past. What is their advice to those clients as well? Shri, good having you. Thanks so much for taking the time out and joining us on Bloomberg Quint. What would the central message be to your clients? Stay light ahead of the key events? I mean, the policies and then the election verdict, or no, that's not the case?
We don't think that this policy is going to much change from the direction it has given so far. In fact, if you look at the policy, what the governor has been saying in the policy is effectively looking at and addressing the inflation point out there. So from our own perspective, probably we have seen the level of inflation being the lower inflation. What we have seen is already over. The price inflationary pressures that is being seen from, be it in terms of vegetables and be it in terms of unseasonal rains impacting some of these food prices, etc., or for that matter, increase in crude oil prices, probably which will probably add up to your higher trade deficit going forward, etc. These are all the things which needs to be watched out for. So to our mind, we have gone on record saying that probably the interest rates have bottomed out, unless going forward, which if you see in the marketplace where the banks will take the aggressive step of cutting deposit rates to in order to protect their margins, while if they don't want to see any kind of pressures which is going to be there on their NIMs going forward. So our thought process is, yes, we have already seen the lower interest rates. The chances are that interest rates have bottomed out, number one. And number two, while the credit growth still looks anemic at around 6%, while the deposit growth has been upwards of 10%, there's going to be a lot of challenge for the banks to maintain their margins.
Sri Shankar, what have you made of the recent nervousness that one has seen in the markets? We've corrected from those 10,450 levels to about 10,100. Do you see any opportunity at these lower levels?
There is a major election event which is going to happen in Gujarat, and this is probably the first time in the last 3 years that the NDA is facing an election where they have been in the ruling party, and by that way this election has got a lot of meaning to it. It probably even gives a direction to what the policies will be going forward for the next budget. And from that point of view, election results are going to be crucial. Now we have got various feedback coming from the various surveys that has been going on in the on Gujarat in terms of election results. So depending upon which side of the fence you are, if you are liking to see a great NDA victory, and if that's not what the message is, you probably tend to go light on the market, don't keep larger positions. So what the market is indicating is going to be a close fight. That's what it looks like. So I think the market nervousness, as I call it, from correction from those closer to 10,500 levels to 10,450 levels downwards to these levels right now is probably reflecting the nervousness of the market of a bit, not knowing what is going to be the result for each of these parties. I think that's what is market's telling us. That's my inference.
Shri, despite what one would say a fairly good month for November for autos, and yes, it's debatable because some stocks met expectations, some didn't, but it was not a bad month. There's a bit of a pullback that we're seeing in autos by and large. Now, it may be a day's phenomenon. I'm not asking you to comment on that. My question to you is whether with all that you're seeing in terms of monthly sales for the last 3, 4, 5 odd months and the commentaries of the managements thereof, is there a case being made to put fresh money to work in autos? And if so, where do you find preference? Two-wheelers, four-wheelers, CVs? What's the preferred choice?
I think, again, when I look into the automobile the industry or the sector itself, I can't generalize it. See, two-wheelers and passenger cars to me are consumption-led stories. And whereas consumer vehicles, it all depends upon a lot of industrial growth and inventory management, and whether the disruptions of GST is over, are we going back on the growth path, etc. So commercial vehicles is something different. Let's leave it aside for the time being. Whereas passenger cars and two-wheelers is effectively consumption. So we still believe that passenger cars and the two-wheelers and passenger cars growth is going to be still strong. But now, when I say strong, it can't be around for 30%, etc. No, we are at a good large base. So you will tend to see that a smaller kind of a growth. Maruti is the preferred one out there still, which is a 48% market, where they have product segments at all price points, which none of the others, including the global majors, don't have it over here. So clearly from that point of view, we still like Maruti. It's a part of our topics. And on the other side, commercial vehicles again is going to be an industrial story phenomenon. So you will see bunching of growth, etc. Last year in the fourth quarter, you had because of the BS norms, a sale which has happened actually. So the fourth quarter was really good. Third quarter, you had actually demand, so a slowdown, etc. So a year-on-year comparison may not be that great because it was all over the place for various reasons. But overall view on the sector still remains consumption-led growth in two-wheelers and passenger cars. That's going to be the story. Maruti being the best pick that we have up there.
Well, you've got the liquor stocks which have seen traction coming back. Yesterday, you saw Radico Khaitan correcting almost 7 to 8%, but the stock has bounced back. If you could just pull up Radico Khaitan, just in last 5 to 10 minutes, the stock's up about 6 to 7%. In a weak market, United Spirits has been going up. If you could just pull up the weekly chart, in fact, only 2 trading sessions, but yesterday it was up 3%, and today as well, United Spirits in the last 15 to 20 minutes has seen some traction coming back. Shrikant, are you tracking the liquor space? The Q2 earnings were very good. All these companies have been focusing on premiumization, and if some reports are to go by, these companies have also taken price hikes in the recent past.
we don't have an active coverage on the liquor space.
Okay, any other space, Sri Shankar, from the broader markets which currently looks attractive to you, where you guys see some value coming by in the next 5 to 6 months?
I don't think that in a bull market you can find a lot of value, and you need to look at growth. That's what we would think at this stage, and where value is there is in terms of a lot of PSU banks. But my big call is that you will still continue to see them as big value plays. I don't see them actually going from value plays into that tag that they get as a value play will remain as a value play. I think the growth story is still going to be the private sector banks. Because our view is that the worst is over as far as NPAs are concerned. Provisioning may still be there for a few more quarters. That's a different issue. But having said that, it's going to be the new generation private sector banks, old generation private sector banks. It's still going to be going to be a big outperformers going forward again.
Shri, anything in the recently listed, and by recent I don't mean 1 month, maybe the last 3 months, maybe the last 6 months, but in the recently listed space that has caught your eye? Because we're looking at how, Apex Frozen, Capacite Infra, a couple of other of these names, Shankara Building Products, for example, on a roll. Avenue Supermarts is probably just that not spoken about poster boy. Almost everything else seems to be doing okay. Any story that has stood out for you? Because I knew you guys at Prabhudas Leather were very bullish on Thyrocare about a year ago, post its listing. What has been the flavor this time around?
Of the stocks you mentioned, of course, Shankara has done very well. We had an IPO note also out on it, etc. But what's interesting is on most cases, I don't think that there has been much left on the table for a sharp rise post listing. IPO itself has fairly priced, but you have seen some of these stocks which is getting into a lot more interesting insurance space. You had over the last 1 year an ICICI Pru, SBI Life right now, HDFC Life. Then you have some of the other companies from the different side. In the logistics space, there are so many IPOs which is happening. So it's all, you cannot generalize it. So there are some good issues. Stocks, sorry, stocks like Shankara, which did not have a comparison in the listed phase, became a darling of investors. So there are some winners, there are some losers, and again from the insurance side, I think all the listings have been pretty good.
I just think it's a big move that we've seen on that stock ever since listing, and it's just been a big wealth creator in the newly listed space. Has been Shankara Building Products, 2304, up another 3.5% in the session today as well. Good going. Shri, before we thank you, or at least my last question from my end, considering the fact that you didn't believe policy is a big market mover, and let's work with an assumption that from a market's perspective nothing untoward happens post the Gujarat election verdict as well, what's that one pocket, one theme which is a dark horse according to you?
Let me correct you. I'm not saying that policy is not a big market mover. We are expecting in the policy nothing great, no major change to happen, because the direction in the policy has been there, very much there at every point of time. That's one. But to me, Gujarat election results are going to be pretty crucial in terms of which way the direction of the next budget is going to be there.
Shri, what's the view on the IT space post the Q2 earnings? We've seen the Nifty IT constituent seeing some bit of EPS upgrade. Are you guys covering anything in this space? If yes, if you could tell us which are the stocks that you're bullish on?
See, the IT space, there are a couple of things which we need to bear in mind. That IT is one sector in which every fund manager was probably underweight. And because it was underweight, and when it started to change, they are slowly becoming more and more interesting for investors. And especially when you started seeing the currency or the rupee or the crude started to move up. And then it was a natural hedge, and probably people started working on yes, earnings growth stories for the IT side. So the mid caps have been much more in prominence. We like Persistent, we like Hexaware, but Persistence is one of our top picks which continues to be there. So we like some of the other mid caps like NIT Tech. We like even the Zenzar, like of it. We have got a soft coverage on Zenzar right now. So Sonata, etc., which is uncoverage list, which we continue to like. But all on a sudden, we the mid-cap space have seen a lot of interest, and these stocks have started rallying right now.
Well, clearly, Sri Shankar, stocks like Sonata, nuclear software from the mid-cap space have seen good amount of gains in the last 3 months. Before I let you go, Sri Shankar, sorry, as a house, if you could share with us, what are your top 3 picks?
No, in the pharma space, we have Aurobindo Pharma as our top pick. We continue to like HDFC Bank, State Bank of India. I did mention about Maruti Suzuki. We also like Yes Bank. We also like ICICI Bank. And then in many other cases, in the mid caps, we have Indraprastha Gas, the Jindal Steel and Power is one of the other stocks that we like. Capital First, Sadbhav Engineering, Persistent Systems, Thyrocare, Tribhuvan, TBZ, Heidelberg and JK Lakshmi in the mid-cap space. So it is not a single sector. It's across the sector. It's more stock specific.
Okay, Sri Shankar, we'll leave it at that note. Appreciate you joining us today and giving us your views on the markets.
Thank you.
Well, as we speak, markets are at day's high. Pull up the intraday chart of Nifty. It's at 10,147, and let me remind our viewers, day's low was somewhere about 10,167 or 69. So it's been a good rally of almost closer to 80 points from day's low. And as we speak, Nifty trades at day's high. Bank Nifty is up almost 0.5%. Once again, trading above the mark of 25,000, inching very closer to 25,200. Well, the markets are going up, but there are some individual stocks which have been in focus. And talking about the stock of the day, it is Sandur Manganese. Well, the counter has jumped almost 10% so far in today's trading session after reporting a stellar set of numbers for the September quarter, with profits jumping twofold, which were aided by an 88% jump in its revenue on the top line. And even if you look at the margins, the growth was pretty good this time around. The EBITDA for the quarter was up 258%, and the margins came in somewhere about closer to 30% vis-a-vis 15.7, which was seen in the corresponding quarter. Well, earlier today, we also connected with the management to get their outlook for the current year. Listen in to what the managing director of the company had to say.
Silico Manganese, which is our ferroalloy product, has done better than the average of last year. There has been good increase in the prices of Silico Manganese. The second reason is that there is a slight about a 5% increase in the overall iron ore prices during the year. During the 6 months compared to last year. PAT should be in the region of about 80 to 90 for the year.
That's interesting. 80 to 90 crores per year is the forecast the management has done for profits for Sandur Manganese. No wonder the stock is holding out. Currently, we'll be trading at 12 to 13 times. That's not terribly expensive, but let's wait and watch what happens to this one over the course of the next few days. In today's session, it's doing okay, 10% higher. Speaking of today's session and speaking of the near term in terms of sessions, investors seem to be cautious as we head into the new year, and uncertainty over the economy and earnings still prevail. But Mahesh Patil of Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund expects some beaten down sectors to do well. In a conversation with us earlier, he said that corporate banks and telecom operators may have bottomed out. Let's listen in.
We think that this quarter, last quarter, is a kind of a turning point in terms of earnings growth, which has been pretty elusive up till now. But I think a lot of pieces are falling in pace at this point in time, and I think around 18-20% growth looks fairly plausible next year, because a lot of the sectors are coming in from a very low base. I mean, look at the corporate banks, the telecom sector, the pharma sector. Again, the base is very, very low over there. And as I mentioned earlier, we are seeing a broader participation across sectors which were not doing well. So I think that gives much more credibility in terms of the growth what one is looking out for next year. So that the second part of your question. The first part of your question in terms of where we are trying to really managing in this kind of environment, I think our outlook is that the market from here on, we're not expecting very large returns from the market. So any kind of a return, especially in the larger good quality names, if you are able to see a return of around 15-20% with good amount of visibility, I think that's a good return to look for at the stock level also. So I think it's important to look at companies and get a firm handle in terms of earnings, where the earnings certainty is there and earnings growth is slightly better than the broader market. Other sectors and stocks where we would be focusing on. And there will probably be expecting better growth in, say, the consumer discretionary side. Again, the cut in interest rates, rising rural incomes, would lead to, and also the shift from unorganized to organized. We have not seen that much, but I think you will see that as GST gets totally compliance starts to happen much stronger next year. So that's the sector which we're seeing a strong growth coming in, and at the same time we need to be some contra plays in the portfolio which can surprise positively, say a bit in the corporate banks or even telecom sector, which are currently depressed but can surprise over the medium to long term.
So that's your contra, PSU banks and telecom?
Yeah. Again, we're not going to go too aggressive over there.
Sure.
We will want to watch how things pan and then slowly build exposure over there.
Anything that you are anti-consensus, you don't think that the market is pricing in right, either on the upside or on the downside?
I think not many actually anti-consensus, because markets is very finely pricing everything at this point in time. Okay. So the first time we are seeing not too much distortion in the market. I think sectors which are doing well are already pricing in the right valuations. Sectors where the outlook is not good are slightly subdued. So not seeing much in fact in our portfolios also we are not seeing a very large tilts or very aggressive call on any particular sector at this point in time.
Okay. Great. Mahesh Patil, one last thought. With an assumption that we don't see any negative surprises from any of the macro events that are slated to happen, you would presume that any large correction will get bought into? You would be a buyer because you guys are the ones which are putting in the money right now. If the market were to correct about 4-5% from these levels, would you be an active buyer?
Yeah, so I think if the outlook on the market remains positive, we think this is a market where you should see making newer highs. And the outlook also on a sector is now improving. So any correction, it will give an opportunity to really buy stocks at a more reasonable valuation. That's what we are looking at. So I think clearly good companies, if they correct whatever 4, 5, 6%.
Good companies which can grow is what people want to buy. And now IDFC Securities has come out with a note on Greenply as one such company. Greenply hosted an analyst meet. There are some key takeaways that this brokerage has had with the management which they've given out, and some interesting comments there. So we thought it's best to get in the management to try and talk about how is this post-GST scenario shaping up and whether there is more in store over the course of the next few months and quarters. The CFO of the company, Mr. Vishwanath Venkatramani, joins us right now on the show. Mr. Venkatramani, thanks so much for joining in. Would this be a correct estimate? Plywood volume growth will revive to between 12 to 15%. If so, by when? Because if the first quarter post GST is anything to go by, and I know it's not a good benchmark, but 12 to 15% seems a bit far away.
Yeah, that's correct. At the moment, we have not seen any recovery happening in the marketplace, but it's still early times. Tax rates have just been reduced from 28% to 18%, which we feel is a very positive step. And now the unorganized segment would also be under pressure to improve their compliances. So going forward, if they start increasing prices for taxes, so that will be positive for the entire organized segment of the industry. And while we feel that the situation on the real estate side is still not encouraging, we feel that no positive improvements on the real estate side is possibly still a couple of years away. But we could see a very positive shift happening from unorganized to branded over the next 2 years. which could result in a growth rate of about 12 to 15% for organized plywood players.
Interesting. I mean, we have seen spurts in low-cost housing moving up, Mr. Venkatramani. Is that not really leading to this uptick? And two, I just wanted a thought from you. Does brokerage believes that if the real estate industry revives, on a CAGR basis, plywood volumes could touch as high as 18%. So if we work with a revival in place, would you believe that volume growth could actually turn to 18% over the next 3 years?
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. Possibly not immediately over the next 2 years, because we don't see any immediate revival happening in the real estate over the next 2 years. But beyond that, definitely we feel that the organized plywood companies could grow at 18% plus levels.
Mr. Venkatramani, first, I just want to check, have you passed on the benefit of the lower GST rates?
Yeah, we have passed on the full benefit of the lower GST rates.
And that would translate into how much of price cut?
It could translate to about 8.5% price cut.
Okay, and that's a blended price cut you're talking about?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I want to know more about the MDF segment. Now, this is a segment which is largely under-penetrated in a country like India. You're setting up a new plant in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and you're also looking to raise, I don't know if you've already raised funds. If you could just give us some details. How much of an investment are you putting in? Because according to the IDFC note, that plant goes operational by September 2018.
Yeah, so we are investing approximately 750 crores in that plant, and all the debt, internal accruals and equity part have been tied up fully. So at the moment, our endeavor is to ensure that the plant starts before the due date of September, October 2018. In fact, we are targeting to start the plant in July 2018.
Okay, you're saying you will be starting the plant in July 2018. At what capacity utilization?
Approximately at about 60% capacity utilization for a period of 9 months in the next financial year.
And to begin with, what sort of revenue contribution are you looking from that plant on your top line?
So with this kind of capacity utilization, we would be getting an approximate revenue of 350 crores from the plant next year. But when it achieves optimal capacity utilizations, which we are targeting in FY22, it should yield about somewhere around 950 crores of revenue.
And what's the sort of margins that you are looking to garner from the MDF segment?
We would be targeting margins in the range of 25 to 27%.
Okay. I'm just looking at the IDFC note. They've targeted revenues of almost 237 crore for the financial year FY19.
2,300.
2,300. All right. Are you on? Do you think you will be able to achieve those sort of numbers?
2,300 crores in which financial year?
FY19.
In FY19.
That's the next financial year when your MDF revenues will also start flowing in.
Yeah, that's correct. We would be able to achieve those kind of revenues next year.
Okay, sir, before I let you go, what's the year-end target that you're looking at in terms of growth on the top line and bottom line?
We are given a guidance of 5 to 7% for the current year. So that's our target for the current year.
Yeah, okay. So about 1,700 to 1,750 odd crores of revenues.
That's
not
correct.
wrong. Okay, and a fair call. Fair call, actually, we've pretty much answered almost all of the questions. Thanks so much, Mr. Venkatramani, for joining in and giving us that perspective.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, that's Greenply. The stock is higher marginally in trade, but clearly the commentary has turned bullish, and which is why the analyst community has come out with notes. We have the IDFC note, which is talking about...
You know, Neeraj, the irony here is he's saying he's not seen revival in the real estate market, and we've got the stocks going up who are largely betting on the affordable housing or housing for all by 2022. So that remains a key concern, I would call it, because clearly the stock prices of all these real estate companies have been inching higher.
That's true. Well, but let's get an initial thought from T.S. Harihar. He joins us right now on the show to talk about the fundamentals. Hari, I don't know if you got a chance to hear what Greenply was saying, but this pet theme of home improvement, which will not be necessarily within low cost or high-end luxury items, but will be used across, is being touted by everybody. Management's hopeful of 12%, 13% growth. Is that a volume growth that would make you want to go out and pay 25, 30p multiples?
I'm not sure. See, Neeraj, fundamentally, I agree that there is a lot of merit in buying these support companies. So instead of trying to ride the housing wave by buying housing companies or housing finance companies, there is a lot of merit in buying these support companies. We have seen stocks like those Sera, sanitary ware, most of the sanitary ware companies who have done phenomenally well in the last 4-5 years. So I think if you take from that perspective, yes. But I think I was just listening into the kind of guidance he was giving. I think at 12-13% guidance, to me, a 25 times valuation looks a little steep. I don't know whether the next 2-3 years after the capacity expansion they're going to improve their growth. But I think at this point of time, it does look to me a little steep considering the growth that they're projecting.
Yeah, well, 1.5% higher for Greenply currently. That stock is okay. Anyways, we will talk more to T.S. Harihar about the fundamentals as well. But first, let's get in our chartists to talk about how are they looking at trade, because the Nifty Bank is certainly on a bit of a move. Twice in 2 days now, it's the Nifty Bank which is leading the markets slightly higher from where it was trading. Look at that Nifty Bank move. It's doing very, very well for itself. So let's get in our experts on board. I'm told Ruchit Jain is with us. So do we have Ruchit? Yes. We do have Ruchit. We also have Shrikant, Chouhan. Gentlemen, both of you, thanks so much for taking the time out and joining in. Shrikant, let's start off with you. Anything that you're doing on the Nifty Bank? Because it's been showing some resilience, if not a brisk move, the last 2 or 3 sessions.
Yeah, absolutely, Neeraj. I think the way the Bank Nifty has fallen, it was a complete vertical fall from the highest high of 25,950 to almost 24,950. And if you go through with the retracement of the entire rise from 23,000 to almost 26,000, then it's a exact retracement where the Bank Nifty has arrested and now it is reversing back. So I am of the view that it's a pullback. Certainly it's a pullback because there is a steep sell-off in the market. So it's a steep pullback to the steep sell-off. And we are expecting 25,350, 25,450 as a next hurdle for the Bank Nifty. So from here also, yes, we can expect 150, 200 points on the higher side. But there, again, we are expecting some selling pressure or liquidation of pending long positions because this time the fall was severe. At the same time, ahead of the credit policy, we are of the view that again, it will take or it will spend some time at resistance level. So at this level, it's a buy with a stop loss at 25,050 on the downside.
And a target of 25,350. That is Shrikant Chouhan's call on the Nifty Bank. Okay, Ruchit, we'll take on your market view in just a bit, but 7 minutes into 2:30, let's just get in some stock ideas first. And you've given us 2 already, so let me start with those. You have a sell on Asian Paints and you have a buy on Dish TV.
Yeah, good afternoon, Neeraj.
Good afternoon.
So, if we look at the stocks, then Asian Paint is one of the stock which had consolidated in a narrow range since last 3 months. And this range-bound trading sessions had led to formation of a triangular pattern. Now, what we had seen in yesterday's session, the prices have breached the lower end of that pattern, and also its long-term moving average of 200-day SMA has been breached. So we believe that in near term, this consolidation phase we have seen a breakout on the downside. So in near term, the prices are likely to remain under pressure. On the weekly charts, the medium-term supports are coming around 1,060, which should be tested. So at current levels, we are advising to go short in Asian Paints, keeping stop loss about 1146 for target around 1060. And we also have one buy call in Dish TV. Recently, during last week, we have seen some good volumes coming in Dish TV during the up move. Prices have retraced some of the recent up move, and around its 50% retracement support. The stock is showing a good. The stock is showing initial signs of a pullback move again. So one can go long in Dish TV. We have a small stop loss of 75.50 for a target around 86, and both these calls are for a duration of about 1 week.
Well, Dish TV will be reporting its quarterly earnings today, so do keep an eye on that. Shrikant, your individual stock ideas?
I think, see, the way today the Bank Nifty is doing well, I am of the view that if we focus on a PSU bank, especially because this time when the fall was there, they were like falling, but the volumes were not that as the sell-off was. So we are of the view that PSU banks to perform much better than private banks in the near term, and PNB looks really good, which is trading around some 175, 176 levels. We also like Indian Bank as well as Bank of India, but PNB has formed some morning star kind of formation on daily basis, and the stock has corrected almost 60% of its entire rise from the bottom of 130. So here the stock is having very good support, and from here we are expecting stock to move to the levels of 183, 185. It's a high beta stock, so if there is any like an event kind of thing, then always high beta stock performs. So it's a strong bet at this level. We also like BPCL, and if we go through with the sector specific activity, then HPCL, BPCL, IOC, they are arresting at these levels. They have already fallen and they are rebounding from these support levels. So BPCL looks good, which is trading at 503, 504 levels, and we are of the view that it is heading for 515, 520 in next maybe 1 or 2 days of time. On the downside, it has a very good support close to 495, so that we can use as a stop loss. And again, if you go through with the crude prices, then on that particular chart, the crude prices have from lower top kind of formation. So it's a bearish formation for crude prices, and we can expect some positivity for all the oil and gas stocks.
There's been a sharp surge in a couple of your banking counters. Pull up the intraday chart of Yes Bank, State Bank of India. Both of them have seen good gains. In fact, IndusInd Bank too has risen in today's session. So the rally which you saw in Bank Nifty is an account of these constituents which have seen gains in the last 15 to 20 minutes. But let's talk about the biggie, Reliance Industries, which definitely has contributed to the recovery one has seen today. The stock's trading closer to 2%, up 2%, around levels of nearly 920, and I think it's bounced off its 50-day moving average, Neeraj, in today's session.
Yeah, so we spoke about this in the morning. Again, I'm no expert of charts, so I don't know whether this would happen recurringly or no. But hey, I just looked at the charts, and if we can focus on the chart on the wall, you will see what I'm talking about. Those at almost every single point in the last, this is since June, yeah, so since June 2017, at almost every single point, Reliance has bounced off its 50-day moving average. No, let's just keep that previous chart and let me actually go to the wall to tell you what I'm trying to point out here. So look at all the circles that I've made here. This is this maroon line or this purple line, whichever color you look at it. This is the 50-day moving average, and since June, there have been at least 4 instances wherein Reliance has come down to the 50-day moving average and then bounced. There is one out here where it probably crossed the 50-day moving average for a bit and then bounced back. But again, I confess ignorance about charts and their efficacies, but this certainly shows that Reliance has this tendency in the last 4 or 5 months to actually bounce off its 50-day moving averages. And this happened in trade yesterday. This last fall happened, and it came close to the 50-day moving average, and it's had a bit of a bounce in the last couple of in today's trading session after falling for the last 2 or 3 trading days.
What it essentially shows, Neeraj, once it breaches the 50-day moving average, there is some buying which comes around those levels.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. This is just that these points clearly show that there is some bit of buying that comes in every time it reaches these levels or no. But as I said, Navneet, I don't look at charts the way Pradeep does, but it's just an observation that the terminal threw up, and maybe we can ask our experts to talk about this. Any thoughts here, Shrikant? Reliance and this bounce off that we're seeing today, can it last?
See, what you're saying is absolutely right, because see, whenever the stock is into long-term uptrend, it gives respect to a 50-day simple moving average, and if there is a major panic in the market, then it falls to 200-day simple moving average. But this particular stock is trending as well as it is into long-term uptrend. So that is why whenever there is a fall and if the stock is available at 50-day simple moving average, it bounces back, and this stock has respected this level almost thrice a time in last this up move from the levels of 660 to almost 950. Today also it is reversing back, and on monthly basis the stock has formed some inside body kind of formation, which is a consolidation, bullish consolidation formation, and based on it we are of the view that in case if Reliance breaks 960, then it will go to the levels of maybe 1060, 1080, which is a 10% kind of up move that we can expect. But yes, in the short term, today the stock has formed some bullish engulf pattern, which is indicating us that it is heading for at least 955, 960, which is its previous highest level, and today's low 895 is going to act as a support for it. So that we can use as a stop loss, and we can take long position in Reliance with a price target of minimum 950, 960 on the high side.
HDFC Bank was also showing some similar chart patterns as well. But anyways, besides the point, Hari, if indeed the markets were to bounce back from these levels, what leads the move? Do you think Reliance has it in it to participate, or would we need the private sector banks to come to the party?
I think private sector banks, yes, just considering the sheer weight that they have in the index, I think their support will be required. But I'm not sure whether private sector banks would be in a position on their own to drive the market. Considering all the publicity we have seen over bad assets and NPAs in the last few days, I'm not sure whether private sector banks at this point of time would have the required momentum. I would believe that any sharp upside in the market will be driven one by Reliance. And two, I think auto sector. To me, I think auto sector is something that has probably not had a major contribution in the index. But I think going ahead, if you look at the monthly numbers, that seems to be one sector which seems to have forgotten about demonetization, forgotten about BS4. And that is one sector that's really, really doing well. So I would believe it will be auto plus Reliance if you're going ahead from here.
Okay, what did you make of some of the news flow that happened? The Class 8 truck sales, yet again on a YOY basis, extremely strong, though you could argue that month on month it fell, but that's okay. The YOY numbers were very strong. Bharat Forge has reacted a bit, not so much for Ramkrishna Forgings, but is this looking like a sustainable position, and therefore would it benefit some of the suppliers?
I believe it should, and you rightly said Bharat Forge happens to be one of my top picks also.
Oh, and, okay, interesting.
And largely for this reason, because we believe that finally that the large truck cycle seems to be bottoming out, and we appear to be in a kind of a long-term uptrend. So yes, I think I don't track Ramkrishna Forge, so I can't really talk about that. But sure, Bharat Forge, we do believe is going to be a major beneficiary of this trend.
And we were talking about Reliance. I guess you have a target of 1,000 rupees there.
Yes, I think, in the last probably, I would say a month or so, Reliance has corrected quite a bit. And I think that's more because a few traders, a few weekends have got onto the stock. I think the froth is out. If you look at the three major business segments, you look at the latest telecom, you look at the petchem segment, and you look at the refining segment. I think in all the three segments, they're actually doing they're operating at a level which is probably the best in history. So I don't think there's any issues in that front. And I would believe that going ahead, we already believe that Reliance is in a long-term upcycle for the next 4 or 5 years. So I think it's a great stock. A short-term target is of course 1,000, but I believe that long-term it could be much more than that.
Well, clearly Reliance has had a good run this year, but Jet Airways is the other one. If you could just pull up the intraday chart, the stock's just gone up. It's sitting with gains of about 4% now, trading at day's high. Ruchit, anything on the charts that this move is triggering? Would you take any longs at 671?
Yes, probably if we see the positional charts of Jet Airways in last couple of months, when the prices have moved higher from the lower end of 450, 460 to 720, the volumes in this up move were significantly higher than what we usually see on a daily basis in Jet Airways. Now, when you see an up move or an uptrend with such a kind of significant volumes, then definitely the medium to long-term trend turns out to be positive. And now, after during this market fall, when the prices have corrected from 727 to almost 627, about 100 rupees odd correction was the 38.2% retracement support of this recent up move which we are talking about. So I think the downside seem to be very limited in Jet Airways, and we can say that any significant corrective moves such as which we have seen in last couple of weeks is likely to get bought into. So I think even at current levels, if one has a positional perspective of at least 3 to 4 months, then we should see this outperformance getting continued on the higher side. From a 3 to 4 months perspective, we believe that the stock would head high up to 760, 770 kind of levels.
Well, you also had HSBC, which came out on a report with regard to aviation sector, where they did highlight that the sector is on cusp of recovery, but looks like they don't like Jet Airways so much. They had a hold rating with a target price of 600, but they did initiate a buy on stocks like SpiceJet as well as Indigo. But the other counter which is doing pretty well is Shriram Transport. In fact, this is one stock which has been very strong right from the word go in the morning, despite of markets being weak in the first half of the session. So currently it's trading with gains of almost 5%. Shrikant, at day's high, Shriram Transport, if somebody had taken a long position, would you recommend them to book profits?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so that someone can take the profit, because the stock is not only at the day's highest level, but it is also into all-time highs. And currently it is trading at 1365, 1370. So from here the stock can go to the levels of close to 1440 or maybe 1500 in next couple of days. So it's a strong breakout buy, and the stock is going up gradually. It is not in hurry. Yes, today the stock is up, but the overall move of the particular counter is suggesting us that it is going up gradually. So certainly one can hold on to it with a trailing stop loss at 1330 on the downside, with a target of 1450 on the high side.
By the way, I must mark Greenply. We spoke to the management a little while back. The intraday of Greenply should come up on your screen. Unless I'm wrong, there's a bit of a spike there. Yes, that's a bit of a spike in Greenply. Let's come and post that interaction. Up about 4% now, 322 and counting. The other interesting one, which has done well, is Hathway Cable. It's actually zoomed up substantially in the last half an hour to 45 minutes of trade. Look at that move on Hathway. I'd seen Den Networks also looking fairly active earlier on. If you can get up Den Networks to, yes, about 6% Hari, we've seen these businesses not really being able to deliver in the recent past. Could these be more trading flares as opposed to there being a fundamental reason to buy? I mean, I have no opinion out here. I'm asking you if you do.
I would believe yes, because what we have seen in these kind of businesses, especially the media convergence business, is that there is a huge gap between potential and the ability to capitalize. And it's a competitive business. Margins are fairly thin. I wouldn't say margins are too huge. And plus, it's a business which is vulnerable to regulatory changes. It's vulnerable to demand changes. So a lot of things happening, and I think a lot of movement we see in these stocks, in my view, is largely speculative. Because ultimately, I would believe traders are looking for new ideas and new stories to move around. So it's probably more of a kind of a new idea floating in the market. But I don't think there is a very strong fundamental story in favor of any of these stocks.
Okay. What's done remarkably well in the last few weeks since its listing is Apex Frozen Foods. Do you look at that one?
I did. In fact, they operate in a very interesting space, which is supply of feeds for prawns and other seafood. So, frankly, I have looked at the company. The company is too new. So, honestly, if you were to look at a company in that particular space, I think there are better choices available. I'm a little worried about Apex because it's a new listing. The stock has rallied very sharply in the last probably few days, and it doesn't really give us a lot of comfort there. I think something like Avanti Feeds, which has been in the business for a very long time, consistently delivered value across the chains in Asia. I think that would, to me, would be a better bet even at these prices. Notwithstanding the rally we have seen in the last 5 to 6 years, I believe Avanti Feeds would be a better bet at these prices.
If we can pull up that last 1 month chart of Apex, and you will see what I'm talking about. It's just, you see what Hari is talking about actually. Just the move that we've seen in this one, the 1 month return is 105%. The stock has doubled. And this is for a company which came out with an IPO, got subscribed post-listing. There has been significant buying that we've seen in this one. So from the IPO price, it is substantially higher. I don't quite remember offhand what the IPO price was, but it has made a lot of money to people who invested in the IPO, and a lot of money for people who bought into the company, even post-listing as well. It's just been a phenomenal mover. 3 months, almost 300% returns. That's stuff that dreams are made of, to be honest. 300% return in 3 months. It's just quite phenomenal. Every time we talk about IPOs, the conversation revolves around the kind of returns that Avenue Supermarts has given. But I tell you, boy, there are companies that have gotten listed recently which have done far better than what the returns from Avenue Supermarts has been. Apex is a case in point. I think Shankara Building Products is the other case in point. Just a phenomenal mover the last 1 year. Post-listing, the gains that it has made for investors is nothing short of stellar. Any thoughts here, Hari?
Shankara, frankly, Neeraj, we were positive on the stock. Like Avenue Supermart, we still continue to be. Shankara, I think we had recommended to our clients about 800. I think somehow around the 1400 mark, most of us kind of got, I would say, got cold feet. Now, we were not too sure how good the stock would be as a long term, but I think the way it has performed in the last probably 6 months is beyond the wildest imagination. I agree, it's a very unique industry. You are in the convergence of, I would say, FMCG plus construction. It's a very unique industry. And I don't think there is any similar listed company available in the market. So that could probably be driving. But having said that, yes, the returns are just simply phenomenal.
Pull up Proj Industries. That counter is now locked in upper circuit. It's sitting with gains of almost 10% around those levels of 115. Do you track this one, Hari?
Frankly, I used to track Proj a long time back. Now, in fact, I would say over the last 3 years, the stock has been so stagnant that we'll almost stop looking at the stock closely.
Okay, so let's get a technical check on this. Ruchit, on the charts, Proj Industries, how is it looking?
Probably the setup is quite bullish. Recently, we have seen that in the month of November, the stock had moved quite sharply from about 75-80 levels to 120, and that up move was supported by very good volumes. Then this corrective move has been bought into, and now around 100-105 range has become a very strong support. So if this momentum continues, which looking at the weekly charts, it seems that is more likely that this momentum would continue, then on the higher side about 127 to 130 levels could be seen in the next few days.
Okay, moving on to the buzzing stock of the day. Radico Khaitan is that counter. Navneet was just speaking about it. Nikki Johnson with more details. Nikki.
Hi, the stock has risen as much as 8.3% today, which is its highest intraday gains that we're seeing right from November 16, 2017 on closing basis. The stock is off its high day level, but then if you look at the volumes, they pretty much remain low at 1.2 times its 30-day average volumes on NSE. Notably, the stock has rallied over 115% in the last 1 year, and in fact has rallied over 30% in the last 1 month for that matter. It has taken informed price hikes in the state, 4 states in the range of around 8 to 13%, and has guided an EBITDA improvement of nearly 100 basis points in each year for the next 3 years. And the counter really demands a higher PE as compared to its other peers. In terms of its Q2 performance, a good show has been coming in there. If you look at the net profit, it's at 12-quarter high that we saw in Q2. Net profit rose 27%. Net sales revenue for that matter was up as much as 24%. EBITDA for that matter was healthy, and the margins expanded at 14.6 as compared to 12.7% in the corresponding quarter.
Thanks a lot, Nikki, for bringing in all those details with regard to Radico Khaitan, which has risen. Remember, the counter was actually down yesterday, so some bit of buying seen at lower levels. There are a lot of stocks which have actually gained momentum. Pull up LMT Finance Holdings. That's up almost closer to 4% now. And remember, this is a counter which is also there in the futures and options market. So probably there are some bit of long positions which are being built up. But I'm just comparing the volumes to yesterday. So it's gone up on a high volume as compared to yesterday's volume on National Stock Exchange. So that's up about 3.7%. Ruchit, LMT Finance on the charts, how is it looking?
So if I firstly look at the weekly or the monthly charts, then definitely there is no second opinion that the long-term trend for the stock is positive. And usually when we see a good long-term uptrend, a positive long-term uptrend, then any side of corrective moves, you look around a good support to buy into. Now the 200-day simple moving average for this L&T Finance Holdings, which is 200-day SMA, is generally considered as a long-term support, is somewhere placed around 160 levels. So we can say that the downside now seem to be very limited in this. And from a positional perspective, one should look to buy into even at current levels or on any dips around 160. One can assume that if we keep a stop loss around 150, one can look for target around 200, 210 in near term.
Okay. You know, I just want to pull one stock. I doubt you might be even tracking this, but look at Intrasoft Technologies. We were speaking about this one yesterday as well. They are Amazon certified suppliers, and they're a marketplace in the US in their own right too. But it's not just about the move today, which is about 10% higher. You look at what this counter has done since Diwali. I was talking about the same thing yesterday, was up about 9% in trade yesterday's session too. But Intrasoft has moved on from about 490 odd to 800. That's more than actually a 50% return in the last 3 months. But more importantly, it's started moving up post October 20 or 21st. Back then it was 500. Now it's 800. So in a manner of what, a month and a half or slightly more than that, the stock has added $300 to its price then. This is a stellar move that is coming in onto Intrasoft. Any thoughts here, Hari? Have you looked at it at all?
No,
you haven't.
Frankly, I haven't. But yeah. You know, I'm not surprised. If you look at it, I was looking at some of the mid-cap stocks that have rallied in the last 1 year. For example, take a stock like Wiesmann Forex. You know, it's up 10 times in the last 1 year.
It's up today as well.
It's hard to believe. You know, and I can understand the idea of a mid-cap rally or a small-cap rally. But you know, a lot of stocks, I only hope everything is proper and above board, because we have seen these kind of things happen in the past. So the kind of returns that some of the stocks are giving, they almost remind me of the way Bitcoin has been traveling in the last few months. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I must say, I think with Intrasoft, they've got some fairly interesting shareholders as well. A couple of endowment funds in the US from universities hold about 10% or 11% stake in this one. A couple of other marquee Indian investors as well. And rumor mills have it that the story seems to be fairly promising. But I, again, confess ignorance about what the numbers are or how the numbers could look like. Just know that the stock has done exceptionally well in the last 3 odd months. Hari, before we let you go, it might be tricky to pick mid caps, but hey, that's where the growth story in India lies, right?
Yeah.
So anything which is to your mind a dark horse, and standard disclaimers that they could well be present, this stock could well be present in your portfolios or client portfolios as well. But anything that is looking like a dark horse, may not move too much necessarily now, but has got a nice multi-year growth story going.
See, I wouldn't call it a dark horse because it's already being spoken about, but Vakrangi is something we are looking at as a very, very big story. Because
really?
The kind of a last mile logic that they have brought in, and let's remember they have brought in a lot of entry barriers into the business. It's not going to be it's not going to be easy for someone to just go in and recreate a Vakrangi kind of a model. So I think the kind of last mile connectivity that Vakrangi has brought in my view, I think the potential to capitalize on that is huge. So we are very positive on Vakrangi. Again, as I said, it's a stock with a disruptive story, so we're not looking at targets at this point of time, but I think that could be a big positive surprise.
This is a 40,000 crore market cap, Hari.
I know.
It's by no means a mid cap.
Yeah, if you use the standard definition of 50,000, yes, but I agree, it's not what it was probably 2 years back. But again, as I said, an extremely disruptive idea. So I think that could be the kind of stock which could actually give you phenomenal returns even going ahead.
True. Anyways, Hari, good having you. Thanks so much for taking the time out and being with us today.
Thank you.
Harihar with his thoughts on markets and specific names and specific thoughts as well. But speaking of specific names, Yash Upadhyay is joining us with the Fab 4 stocks of the day. Yash, good afternoon. What's finding its way to your list?
Good afternoon, Neeraj. So we kick things off with Virenchi Limited. Now this one is a small cap IT name and is locked in a 5% upper circuit today after they reported their Q2 numbers yesterday post market hours, and they were fairly good numbers. We saw their net profit as well as EBITDA seeing a healthy double-digit growth, while margins too saw a 130 basis point bump up on a year-on-year basis. So do watch out for this one. Another name on our radar is Bharat Forge. Now this one had gained close to 4% but is currently sitting at gains of around 3% after North America Class 8 truck sales saw a significant 68% growth on a year-on-year basis, coming in at around 32,400 units. So good news for this one as well. Apex Frozen Foods is another name on our radar. Don't know what's actually making this one move so much, but it is locked in an upper circuit of 5% for a 7th consecutive day, and it has gained more than 400% since listing. So do watch out for this one as well. And lastly, we have Balaji Amines. Now this one had gained close to 7% today and had hit a fresh lifetime high of 674.50 on the NSE after the company said that the Maharashtra government had confirmed a mega project status for its expansion project at Solapur.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Yash. I'm taking a leaf out of one of Yash's Fab 4 stocks. We just spoke about it marginally before. Apex. And I think the Bloomberg terminal has this very interesting market cap movement chart of Apex Frozen Foods. Should come up on your screen. The moves have been very exciting, but just look at this strength in market cap that has come in for Apex Frozen Foods. It's quite scintillating, really. The other space is aviation, I think that Navneet was talking about. And let's just delve into that for a bit, because if you look at what the stocks have done, not necessarily in the recent past, but I think in today's session in particular, it's pretty good. And this is the aviation EBITDA trend. And you will see the kind of moves that these individual names have made as well. Avinash Gorakshakar is with us to talk about this. Avinash, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Aviation, 3 stocks listed. Any bets that you would take?
I think, Neeraj, I think the larger players like Indigo and Jet, I would believe that, these players have a fairly strong geographical reach and a very diversified fleet. So I think clearly one could look at both these stocks, from a slightly longer term view. I think the best part is that air traffic growth has grown in double digits. The near term headwinds could be from the crude oil prices. I think any rise in the crude oil prices obviously could dent their profitability. But overall, I think, the markets are definitely taking it in their stride. As long as air traffic grows, at a healthy pace, I would believe that Jet and Indigo, if one were to take a slightly medium to long-term view, these are definitely positional bets which can definitely give a good, decent reward.
And what do you make of the consolidation? Because we know that Air India is on the block, and Indigo was the only, company who had officially evinced interest in buying only the international operations of Air India. And I guess recently the ministry came out and said, no, we're not going to do that. If we sell Air India, it's going to be together, both domestic and international. So do you think there'll be any buyer if they want to sell together both the businesses?
See, I think in Air India, the bigger challenge is the debt on the balance sheet. Because I think that is something no buyer would like to take on board.
And that's on the domestic side of the business.
And another problem for Air India is their high employee cost. If you see the employee cost vis-a-vis all the airlines, they are one of the most heavily staffed airlines with the lowest productivity. So obviously, these parameters are going to be very crucial when the sell-off happens. My sense is, I think, Air India would obviously have to look at what the scenario is from the buyers when they actually sit on the table. So it's not going to be all that easy. But yes, clearly, I think this is a piece which most of the existing players would look at very seriously, because along with the, with the market share and the reach, they also have a lot of space on the airports. They have a lot of infrastructure assets which come along with them. So to that extent, it could be a good opportunity for a company to take a stake in this company, provided the debt and the employee cost. These are two things which possibly would definitely give an overhang to the existing buyer if these also come along with the deal.
Now watch out for some of these names, and let's just, before I get to a technical view out there, let's just get in that chart going, and it shows the EBITDA trend for the 3 listed stocks. So the bars in blue are the EBITDA trends of SpiceJet, and as you can see that those EBITDA trends have really gone up in the last couple of years. The yellow is Indigo, which has come off a little bit. Red being Jet, which again has come off a little bit. So if you look at the EBITDA trends, I think you probably believe that SpiceJet is a winner. But hey, the other players have their strengths as well. However, Jet certainly seems to be having the strength today. Shrikant, any thoughts here? Jet Airways from a trade perspective?
I think certainly something is happening in this particular company because the way whenever there is a recovery in the market, this particular stock recovers sharply. And this time when the stock was like completely down in the month of October, on 23rd of October, it was quoting at some 460 levels. From there, all the way stock moved to the levels of 720, which is a spectacular rally. And after that, today the stock has corrected to its crucial level of 625, 630. From there, the stock rebound. So I am of the view that in case in this up move, I'm to say in today's pullback, and in next few days of time, if we see the stock is crossing 730, then it will have a very strong bullish implication. It will enter into strong impulse up move, and that will take the stock to the levels of maybe 950 or 1000 in next few weeks of time. So it's a very strong bet to buy and hold for next couple of weeks. Indigo is continuously underperforming, even though when there was a activity in Jet Airways, Indigo was down. Today also it is underperforming, but certainly Jet Airways is a buy. In today's date, if really like somebody wants to take a buy call, then I think with a stop loss of close to 650, one can initiate long position with a price target of 725, which is its nearest highest level for next 1 or 2 days of time, with a time frame of 1 or 2 days.
Okay, that's the view on the aviation space, but clearly Jet Airways is having a great day today. That's up almost 5%. The other counter, which is locked in upper circuit, and this is one stock which has been doing pretty well. The numbers have been reflecting in the earnings. Action Construction Equipment, that's up 10%, which is locked in upper circuit. Avinash, do you track this one? 142 and counting. Do you think it can scale higher from here?
No, in fact, Navneet, we recently met the management, and I think the management is extremely positive on the fact that they won't be requiring any capex for the next 2 to 3 years. Operating leverage would obviously benefit them, and whatever short-term debt also they have, around 75-80 odd crores, that also they plan to repay over the next 12 months. So clearly, from a from an earnings standpoint of view, FY19 is going to be a takeoff year for them. They are looking at a very strong EBITDA margin expansion to roughly about 10-12% from 8 to 9% this year. And the management is confident. They've got new products like tractors and harvesters and balers, which probably also would now start contributing the road builders, which probably were not there a couple of years back. So apart from the crane market, which they have a market share of almost 65%, they're the market leaders. I think clearly these incremental products are also going to contribute to the bottom line. So I think markets are clearly, happy to know that this company is now slowly in the takeoff mode. Infrastructure improves. Obviously, cranes are the first, equipment these companies buy out.
Okay. Action Construction Equipment, I think, had a remarkable quarter and started moving up from those 70-80 odd levels. Now at 142, actually went up to about 145, 150, and cooled off a little bit, and now again coming off. There you can see the peak that it did, northwards of 150, and then cooled off a bit, and now starting to come back is Action Construction Equipment. Anybody else that you met recently, Avinash, that sounded promising from an investment perspective?
No, in fact, Neeraj, I don't know how many people track this company called Reliance Industries.
Which one?
This is a company which is basically into...
No, how do you spell it? So
Vian, V-I-A-A-N.
V-I-A-A-N, Vian Industries.
This basically is a company, which is into entertainment and wellness and fitness. They also have an entertainment division.
Oh, is it owned by Shilpa Shetty?
Yeah.
And
So basically, the business model is yet building on, but the kind of numbers they have put up in the first 6 months, I think last year they posted a turnover of 220 crores and a bottom line of 11 crores. In the first 6 months itself, with the top line is 130 crores and a bottom line of 13 crores. And our talks with the CFO clearly reflected that, they are very confident of a 28-30 crore bottom line this year. They've already given a small placement to HT Media, roughly at 31-32 rupees. So, some institutional interest has started coming in. But this is a company which possibly, there's a lot of doubts in the market whether this business model will work out or not.
What does it do?
It's basically into health and beauty products which Shilpa Shetty promotes. They are into entertainment programs. They have a very, fancy program on colors where you can bid for a 10 lakh car, by paying just a rupee. So it's organized on Colors channel every week. So that is, being contracted for about a 26 episode, and which is, grossing quite a large amount of audience. And the third is obviously the poker game. If you are aware of the poker championship which happened recently, they have tied up with the International Poker Federation, where they had a very good successful run this time. And they're saying that, this event itself could generate them about 7 to 8 crores. There are 7 teams where possibly, the gross money which comes up front is about 7 crores, and the audience is slowly growing. There are about 10 million players who play poker in India. So clearly these are new concepts, Neeraj, but I would believe that yes, somebody who wants to take a risk, I mean, it's not a very aggressive valuation. It trades at about 30 to 33 rupees. So this could be an interesting play.
Okay. Yeah. Promoter entities include the Kundras and market cap of 350 crores. So 350 crores, Avinash, you said they could clock in PAT of 30 odd crores.
30 odd crores on a capital of 10 crores.
Yeah, but FY17 they hardly did anything, Avinash.
No, if you see the consolidated number, Navneet.
Okay.
The standalone business, see, they have a trading arm which actually sells mobile units in the Russia and the Ukraine market. And they have a wellness and fitness division for the domestic market. They have an entertainment unit for the Indian market, and obviously the poker, event just happened a couple of months back. So second half, you're going to see a lot of inflows from the domestic kind of business.
Okay. please do your due diligence. I think Avinash would say that as well. He's convinced, but he would urge you to do your own due diligence as well. It's an entertainment business. It's probably not a predictable business. So that would be a standard disclaimer. Are you invested out here, Avinash?
Yeah, we've been telling some of our clients to get in. In fact, we have a small research note, but then we have told our clients that, this is a new business. Obviously, some amount of risk is obviously there. But looking at the kind of risk reward, obviously the reward could be significant because these businesses could throw up a significant operating leverage. Mind you, this is not a very asset heavy business. Yeah. So, the profitability could spring a big surprise if things work out clearly in their favor.
Yeah, the standard disclaimers there. Avinash Gorakshakar as well. Interesting business, all right. Okay, I don't know if dealing rooms are talking about Reliance Industries or no, but they're talking about something. Let's get in Darshan to find out from him what his channel checks are telling him about trade today or for the near term. Darshan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Neeraj. One of the counters which is seeing heavy selling today is IRB Infra. It's down almost 2%. Some of the HNIs are actively shorting the counter, or probably some of them are squaring off their position. If you look at the past 3 or 4 day chart, you can clearly see that the trend has turned negative. There is ample selling that is happening on IRB Infra. So this is the first stock that dealers are talking about. Balkrishna Tyres as a pack is seeing a lot of traction today, be it Balkrishna or MRF, but a large domestic mutual fund is actively accumulating Balkrishna Industries. And one of the counters which is up in upper circuit is Proj Industries. I tried to find out from dealing rooms what exactly is happening, and there was a sales note that was there which indicated the fact that there seems to be a lot of government's push towards biofuels, especially ethanol blending, to cut the dependence on fuel imports that is coming in. And if that does happen, Proj makes equipment that does a lot of blending of these fuels. So Proj is the beneficiary, and on the back of that, the counter is up almost 10% today.
Thanks a lot, Darshan, for bringing that dealing room check. In fact, Balkrishna, which is also there in the futures and options space, has been pretty active today. But besides that, Neeraj was talking about Hathway Cable. That counter is up almost 15% now. And not only that, you've got Den Networks too, which has surged in today's trade, and that's inching very closer to its 52-week high of 108. Currently, Den Networks is at 103.7. Avinash, any view on these two stocks?
No, I think, Navneet, these stocks have been gathering momentum largely because markets are now perceiving them to be more of consumption plays as well as data plays. And I think along with Hathway and Den, there is another company called GTPL Hathway. Now, this has also attracted a lot of HNIs and a lot of institutional interest. So, I would believe that, yes, in terms of earnings growth, all these companies should do reasonably well because overall, these companies have been clearly looking at data as a kind of independent business, and that is actually throwing up a big opportunity. So, I would believe that over the, say, next 12 to 18 months, one could definitely expect a good surprise on the margins as well as on the top line front for most of these companies.
Okay, what else? Something that's moving around in the last few minutes of trade, not so much in the large cap space. Bharti Airtel and Infratel probably have inched up a little bit from the levels that they were at, but Radico Khaitan, certainly.
Even United Spirits, both are at days high, I guess.
So bring up both really, Radico as well as United. Radico is now up 10%, United Spirits probably at days highs. A couple of small names as well. I just want to see what Som Distilleries is up to. Just bring that stock up to on the screen. That one marginally higher as well. A bit of a spurt in these counters. Ruchit, any trades here? The distillery or the alcohol companies, Radico, Som, for that matter, even United Spirits?
I think amongst this, no doubt that the trend is positive in all these names. And United Spirits, even at current level, seems we could get a good risk-reward ratio to play on the long side. A high top, high bottom structure has continuously been formed since last few weeks now. And even the RSI, which was earlier overbought, is now trading into comfortable zone post a small consolidation phase in prices. So on the higher side, we are expecting target somewhere around positionally somewhere around 3550 to 3600. So the risk reward is quite favorable to go along at current levels in United Spirits in this space for target around 3550 to 3600.
If you look at all-time high levels for United Spirits, it's somewhere about 4082, which was last seen in 2015. and today the stocks touched its fresh 52-week high. So let's see if the road to 4,000 is as smooth that one has seen from 1900, or rather from below those levels when the highway ban came about. But after a strong second quarter earnings, clearly all these stocks have seen good amount of price action. Avinash, if you were to pick one stock in this space, which one would that be?
I think United Spirits definitely would figure out there, Navneet. I think I would also be positive on United Breweries because, the beer market is also growing at a healthy pace, and considering the kind of quarter 2 numbers, both from United Spirits as well as from United Breweries, I would believe that, this is going to be another strong quarter for them. December is anyway a good festival time when possibly, the brewery and the liquor sales actually are at a fairly high level. So I would believe that United Spirits as well as United Breweries, from a say year, 2.5, a year to 2 year kind of time frame could give a very strong risk reward, provided one has a medium to long term view.
Okay, 3:20. Let's get in closing strategies. Shrikant, to you first. Your top closing strategy would be?
I think the way the market's like reversed and there is a pullback that we are expecting in the market, I think we have to focus more on bank stocks because they are going to remain in limelight. And after PNB, if I really want to choose any one, then State Bank looks good, which is into long-term breakout, as well as in the short term also the stock has now corrected to the major areas, support areas of 308, 310. So today's closing, I think 318, 319 looks encouraging. I think it is above its previous day's highest level. So with a stop loss at 308, which is today's lowest level, or if there is a little lower risk we have to carry, then 313 should be the stop loss for the stock to buy for, and we can keep a target of again 335 on the high side. So we are specifically bullish on all PSU banks, and we are of the view that they are corrected to their important support levels, and from here again they should start their upward journey.
Ruchit, what about you? What are your top trading ideas?
Well, I'll recommend one of the market outperformers, which is V-Guard Industries. During the month of October, we had seen a breakout in the stock, and post that breakout, we have seen very significant volumes coming in the move. Prices are again showing that this uptrend is likely to continue. So I would recommend to go long at current levels in V-Guard, keeping stop loss below 226 rupees. And on the high side, we expect target around 245 to 247 in next 1 or 2 trading sessions.
Okay. Well, when the market goes up, your usual suspects like V-Guard and Jain Irrigation, both of them, and they're also in the futures and options market, so the trading activity is definitely higher on these two counters. Avinash, any thoughts on V-Guard or Jain Irrigation?
No, I think Navneet, Jain Irrigation could be an interesting choice because my sense is that in the coming budget, we could see a very big boost given for all these rural India kind of input suppliers, and especially irrigation, because the government is definitely going to give a pro budget, and I would believe that companies like Jain Irrigation, which have got a large agri kind of market to service, would be key beneficiaries. You could see a very large outlay on the agriculture kind of side, especially for drip irrigation, and that is definitely going to be a short-term kicker for the company. As it is, the management call post the Q2 numbers was quite encouraging. They are talking of a further working capital improvement, a debt reduction on the balance sheet, and in the near term, I think their food processing unit is going in for an IPO. So I think these are near-term triggers. The company should definitely benefit over the longer term, but in the short term, these positive factors should play out favorably for the company.
Well, some select sugar stocks are also going up. Balrampur Chini, Dwarikesh Sugar, Dhampur Sugar, all of them have seen some good, strong gains in today's session. Balrampur Chini, as you can see, the stock's turned green and it's almost trading at day's high. The recovery has come in last 1 hour. Dhampur also trading at day's high with gains of 6%. Anything here, Avinash, that you like? Sugar?
No, I think clearly within the sugar pack, I think the integrated players like Balrampur Chini or maybe a Dhampur could possibly be looked at. I think clearly the markets are also looking at the fact that if the ethanol percentage in petrol is further enhanced, then these companies definitely get a further leverage on whatever molasses sales they do. But I think clearly within the sugar market, an integrated player like Balrampur Chini and Dhampur could be definitely be looked at. But yes, these are cyclical stocks, so one has to be careful and has to take a 1 or 2 quarter view in mind whenever one puts your money.
Even Triveni Engineering in that basket is up almost 8%. If you could just pull up that stock. Shrikant, the sugar stocks that we've highlighted, any of them look good on the charts?
See, today's move is quite surprising because the sector was completely down. But in that space, we like Dhampur Sugar, which is trading at 288, 289 levels. And this particular stock has maintained its bottom. When the Balrampur Chini has broken its previous bottom, Dhampur is still holding above its previous bottom and it is completely outperforming stock. So I am of the view that today it is trading at 288, 289, and if there is a medium to long term view, then certainly one can buy this stock at current levels. See, it is very difficult to trade in these stocks, but yes, if there is a delivery kind of view, then buy at current levels, because we are expecting that stock is heading for minimum 400 plus in next couple of weeks. And apart from all these stocks, I think if we really want to focus based on the ethanol story and all, then we have to focus on Renuka as well as Bajaj Hindustan. So these two stocks are also showing a lot of momentum. They are holding at their important levels. Even though there is a fall in the market, they are not falling. There's a quite outperforming or relatively outperforming kind of characteristic for these two stocks. So we are equally bullish on Renuka as well as Bajaj Hindustan with a view of next few weeks.
Well, just 6 minutes for markets to close, and Nifty is back in the red. Bank Nifty's off day is high now, sitting with gains of 50 points. So once again, I think you have seen some selling pressure coming right at the top. And just to remind our viewers, though we did see that recovery coming about in the markets, but the India Volatility Index was still trading in the green all through. So this has to move around the levels of 12 or 12.5 for any sort of recovery, so to say, to be seen on the market. So India VIX is still at elevated levels above the mark of 15. Also pull up the intraday chart of Cummins India. That counter is trading with gains, not much of gains, but still holding about its off day is low, at least trading around those levels of 870. Ruchit, on the charts, Cummins India, I know we don't talk about it much, but still it's an F&O counter. Would you recommend taking any sort of trade here?
Within the mid-cap space, since last 3-4 months, the stock has continuously formed a low top, low bottom structure. So we've not seen any kind of outperformance in the recent past. So I think any kind of pullback moves is likely to get is likely to face resistance around 880, 885 kind of levels. So won't recommend to go long, but in case if any traders have the long position in this, then pullback moves up to 880, 885 should be used as an opportunity to exit from this one.
Avinash, what have you made of the rally that one has seen in the mid-cap IT space, Hexaware, Mindtree, or you've also got stocks like Sonata, Nuclear Software, some good gains, at least from the month of October, have been seen. Is there any value that you see at current levels?
I think clearly, mid-cap IT is going to be a theme which is going to be much better played compared to the frontline IT companies. I think here, stocks like Persistent and Majesco, I think clearly we are quite positive that, these companies have a strong product vertical, and the kind of headwinds which they've got from most of their US clients seems to be quite positive. So you'll see probably some further upgrades coming in. Obviously, the second half is going to be questionable in terms of what incremental orders they get. But I would believe that, compared to a HCL Tech or maybe a TCS, valuations definitely look fairly cheap if you talk on a relative basis, and clearly I think markets are hopeful that margin expansion could take place in these smaller companies. The bigger companies could possibly still struggle, with basically a single digit kind of top line growth and margin expansion not coming out.
Hey, Marit, I don't know if it's got to do with the ethanol price hike or otherwise, but it was supposed to happen on December 1st.
Oh.
I don't know if that's the reason why sugar and both Proj as well are moving up in the last in today's session, because the ethanol prices were slated to be increased by 5% from December 1st. So that would be one small trigger for the sugar names, but there's a perceptible move upwards. Probably presume that this could be one reason as well. I don't think anything in the demand supply situation really changes this too much, because there would probably be more opening stock next sugar year compared to what we had this year, which is about 4 million tons. So I think the opening stock next year will be higher than what it is this would be this year, simply because the expectation is that the production would be equal to the consumption. So therefore no problems. Therefore some import will do the trick. But the sugar prices have been falling as well. Keep that in mind, because the stock of government wanted to scrap the sugar stock limit to arrest the price fall. I think that showed that there is nothing in the sugar prices which would have led to this. You probably believe that maybe some moves on that front, as well as ethanol, could have well led to these stocks doing so much better in trade. Very, very quickly, Shrikant, sugar companies?
We discussed, but we like Dhampur Sugar, and I'm of the view that irrespective of any specific news flow, I think this particular sector and stock is are into a strong long-term uptrend, and if we choose good companies, then certainly we are going to make money. We like Dhampur Sugar, and we are focusing more and more on companies like Renuka Sugar as well as Dhampur Bajaj Hindustan at current levels to take fresh entry.
Apologies, I know actually Shrikant did give his view. Maybe I should have asked Ruchit about it. But nevertheless, we'll first wrap up the markets and then talk about some of these names as well. You would see a flat day of trade, and not surprised there, quite frankly, ahead of the policy day. Not that the policy will really evoke too much of a response unless there. Let's get in some individual names going very quickly, and not enough gainers. Reliance Industries and SBI top of the pile, Bharti Airtel marginally so, but aside of that, there aren't enough gainers in the session today. And scaled up screen down, camera down, right down to the bottom of the screen. A clutch of names losing out. Wipro amongst the principal losers, but autos by and large, Hero MotoCorp, Eicher Motors, Bajaj Auto, a lot of these were looking slightly wobbly in trade. Larsen and Toubro about 1% lower as well. So that is adding to a bit of pressure. But clearly, a slightly difficult day for the auto stocks today. They are the ones which are piling on the pressure. Navneet?
Continue to remain in focus. So from the broader markets, you have stocks like Action Construction, which did pretty in upper circuit with gains of almost 10% and obviously closing around the day's high. Hathway and Den Network, both these companies saw gains in the second half of the session coming about. Hathway closed almost at day's high with gains of 15%, and you'll also have Den Networks coming there on your screen. That saw gains of closer to 12%, so closing at day's high, a positive sign. Well, we've been discussing the sugar companies. Proj Industries was locked in upper circuit with gains of 10%, so that was also in focus. The entire pocket was, however, up and about just in that last half hour of trade. Recovery seen in Radico Khaitan. We covered the stock yesterday as well when there was some sort of selling seen, but from those lower levels, look at that, just in the last 1 hour or 1.5 hours some buying came in, and the stock finally closing around the day's high levels at 289. Intrasoft Technologies is the other one. Midcap IT continues to be in focus. This counter gained almost 10%, and from the aviation space, Jet Airways saw good gains. In fact, the stock closing around the day's high levels at 677. You also had stocks like Technofab that saw some bit of selling pressure today. In fact, Technofab was down 17%, closing the day at day's low. And MT Educare, a company which was in focus yesterday after some news reports suggested that Z-Learn could be picking up stake, but the company refuted those rumors, and after that you saw the selling pressure yesterday as well as today. The stock down almost 11%, and a stock like Madras Fertilizer, which has been moving up in the last few sessions, saw a bit of profit booking today. So Madras Fertilizer closing around the levels of 41 with cuts of almost 7%, Neeraj.
Yeah, clutch of these active names today. Petronet LNG is up about 3%. Hexaware is up 3%. So a bunch of mid caps which are active. But net the market very flat. As you can see, while Hero MotoCorp is the one which is coming out because of weightage, some of the other stocks are not there, but it's auto which dominates the losing side. HDFC Bank contributing a bit. Had it not been for Reliance, and I think State Bank of India in the last 45-50 minutes of trade really spurt up, and that helped the gainers a bit. But otherwise, it's a no-go kind of a day. The market breadth, let's just see if it improved a little bit, ever so marginally, but you would be disappointed with what is arguably a 2:3 kind of a market breadth in favor of the declines. So nothing great there. And the heat map will show you that the quantum of red on the screen just stayed put throughout the trading day. We've had so many ticks in the red in terms of the number of stocks which are not trading with gains compared to the number of stocks which are gaining with gains. So it'll go down as a slightly weak day of trade. Some bounce back for stocks like Bajaj Finance and others, but goes down as a weak day of trade. Technology not taken the cleaners, but certainly under a bit of pressure in trade today. Nevertheless, final thoughts from our experts. And Ruchit, to you first. Maybe we've discussed sugar enough, 2 micro or pocket. Let's talk about what happened to autos today. and if you believe there could be more weakness for some of the auto names?
I think within this space, one needs to take more of a stock-specific approach now. We have seen names such as Maruti, Bajaj Auto showing phenomenal outperformance in the recent past. But stocks such as Hero MotoCorp, which in spite, even if we see it in the two-wheeler space, the TVS motor, Bajaj Auto has done quite well. But Hero Moto has now been forming a low top, low bottom structure, and it has given a breakdown from a head and shoulders pattern. So we believe that it would be more of a stock-specific momentum within this sector. We are not expecting any significant up move in any of the names except TVS Motor, which has been doing quite well. But yes, Hero Moto is likely to remain under pressure, and on the lower side, as per the patterns which it has formed, we can see target somewhere around 3,300 to 3,350 in near term.
Shrikant, how would you be approaching the markets on an all-important day? The RBI meet is there. Any sort of trade that you would be taking on Bank Nifty?
I think, say, like whenever there is an event, market takes a neutral stance and it consolidate around opening or previous closing levels. So tomorrow also in the first half we are expecting neutral to consolidation kind of activity. But in case if we able to see the market is closing, or if we see the market is sustaining well above today's highest level of 10,150, then there will be a scope that the market will try to retrace at least 50% of the entire fall from 10,410 to 10,000 and 60-70 on the downside. So which is close to 10,250, 300 on the high side. So what is important is today's highest level to sustain in tomorrow's date. For Bank Nifty, yes, of course, the stock Bank Nifty has fallen very badly from the highest high of 26,000. We are of the view that it is going to perform in the near term, and at least 25,450 is the target in next 1 or 2 days of time. So tomorrow, if there is any lower opening, then certainly we should utilize that to create some long positions with a stop loss at 25,000 or 25,050 on the downside.
All right, Shrikant as well as Ruchit, thanks a lot for joining us today and giving us the technical views. But Avinash, before we let you go, some closing thoughts from you as well. Do you see any sort of jitters in the market? Because we've seen correction from 10,400 to now 10,100 levels. If not, if you don't see, what sort of stocks that you would look to accumulate at these lower levels?
No, I think clearly within the frontline auto space, we continue to like two-wheelers. Bajaj Auto could be a good, stock which, if it corrects, we would definitely look at it, because not only the volume growth number has come in definitely on a slightly lower base, but if you look at the kind of news flows which are going to come in here, they've already got an approval for the quarterly cycle. They are looking for a launch for electric bike. I would believe that the two-wheeler market is now going to grow in 8 to 10%, and Bajaj Auto definitely should benefit. And yes, the auto component companies which we have been telling from a long time, I think companies which have a decent export as well as a domestic market share, something like a Motherson Sumi, a Ramkrishna Forgings, a Bharat Forge, I think these are companies which, if they correct, they should be accumulated, and kept, for the near term. I would believe that we could see a big bounce once the Gujarat elections are over, and then the market could directionally, start moving upwards.
All right, Avinash, thanks a lot for joining us today and giving us your views on the markets. Well, on that note, we'll slip into a short break on this edition of Countdown. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more on the other side.
Are we live? Welcome to programming that's insightful, authoritative, and at your fingertips.
Bringing news alive. So immersive, so new, and so addictive. You will want it no other way.
The Bloomberg Terminal, accessed only by over 325,000 marquee investors across the world until now.
Just business news, we're news for business people.
Welcome back. You're still watching Countdown right here with us on Bloomberg Quint Live. Well, clearly it was a volatile session. We started the day on a very negative note. In fact, in the first half of the session, the markets were trading in the red, but just about closer to 2 o'clock, you saw some recovery coming about, as you can see on the intraday chart of Nifty, but that also got sold into. So the bears were back into the markets. But remember, this volatility was also on account of you have certain events lined up. Tomorrow is the RBI monetary policy. Therefore, you saw some moves coming about for these banking counters. The Bank Nifty, however, closed in the green. You had good moves seen from SBI, as you can see it on your screen. That's the Nifty contribution chart. Reliance contributed 10 points to today's moves on Nifty. SBI, Yes Bank and Bharti Airtel were a couple of other stocks which ended the day in the green. What capped the moves on the down on the upside were stocks like HDFC Bank, which holds almost 10% weightage on Nifty. You also had heavyweights like ITC, that was down today, and from the auto pack, Hero Motocorp, and you also had stock like NTPC, which was down, and these were the stock which capped the moves on the upside. Let's also pull up the advanced decline ratio, because the broader markets were pretty mixed today, and towards the end also you saw there were more declines on NSE compared to advances. So that's the ratio, almost closer to 1:2 that you're seeing on your screen. And the mid cap and the small cap index saw mixed moves coming about. No major declines, no major gains on these broader market, but definitely there were some individual pockets which did well, from the likes of Action Construction. You had stocks like Proj Industries. Both of them were locked in upper circuit in today's session. Well, that's about the Indian markets. Let's also look at the European markets and see how they are trading. And it looks like it's a mixed session there. Joining us now to give us a wrap on what's happening there is Chouhan Potts. Hi, Chouhan.
Good morning. Yes, European stocks struggling for direction this morning following that mixed session in Asian markets. Most of the region now trading a little bit lower, with a slump in industrial metals dragging mining shares down, and investors continuing that rotation out of technology stocks. Now, as markets weigh the latest developments in efforts to overhaul the US tax system, Treasuries edging lower today and the dollar steady this morning. Now, the pound sterling also slightly weaker today as Brexit talks continue. Now, you'll notice the negotiations failed yesterday over that thorny issue of the 300-mile land border with Ireland. Some disappointing non-food UK retail sales data also adding to that negative story for the pound. The euro also slipping a little bit today. That's despite PMI numbers showing economic momentum accelerating to its fastest pace in over 6 years in November. On the bond markets, most European sovereign debt rising, with Greek bonds outperforming after progress on the country's bailouts. Elsewhere, oil extending losses today below $58 a barrel. That's ahead of US government data. Forecasters show that crude stockpiles decreased for a third week. Back to you.
All right, Chouhan, thanks a lot for bringing all the details from the European markets. But moving on, the finance minister kicked off his pre-budget meetings with agriculturists today and was presented with a long list of demands, which include a minimum income security, among other measures, while arguing that the minimum support price mechanism is a less than effective way of ensuring a fair price. Agriculture economist Ashok Gulati strongly advocated for a better buffering mechanism in the country. Lack of structural reforms, he said, was one of the main reasons for a rise in farm loan waivers.
कुछ ऐसी कमोडिटीज़ हैं जिनके प्राइसेस जो हैं वो एमएसपी से नीचे चल रहे हैं, तो फार्मर जो है घाटे में जा रहा है। उसके लिए सुझाव आए कि भाई ये जो प्राइस वॉलेटिलिटी होती है, कभी एकदम बिल्कुल नीचे चले जाता है, कभी ऊपर चले जाता है, तो उसको किस तरह से हम ठीक कर सकते हैं। तो उस प्राइस वॉलेटिलिटी, क्योंकि ये एक सबसे बड़ा मुद्दा हमारे सामने है, सेक्रेटरी साहब ने रखा भाई इसके ऊपर बताइए क्या क्या हो सकता है। तो उसमें आया कि स्टॉकिंग, बफर स्टॉकिंग उसकी कीजिए, उसमें आया कि फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ मिलके एक वैल्यू चेन खड़ी कीजिए, जैसे मिल्क में खड़ी की हमने।
एक निर्णय लिया था, प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइज कंपनीज का इंटरेस्ट है वो किसान का प्राइस और कंज्यूमर का प्राइस के बहुत अंतर है, वो अंतर कम करने के लिए प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कंपनीज आए तो कम उनका अच्छा रेट रिलीज होता और कंज्यूमर्स की कम रेट में मिलता। बट लेकिन प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कंपनीज का इसमें वो इनकम टैक्स में 30% टैक्स लगा दिया था और पेड अप ऑथराइज कैपिटल की भी फीस लगाया था। इसके लिए हम फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर को पूछा पूरा इनकम टैक्स निकालो, ऑथराइज कैपिटल का निकालो, ये सेपरेट कोड नंबर दे के इसको दिलाने के लिए ज़रूरत है, इसका सेपरेट इंक्रीज करने का है। इसके बारे में अभी फार्मर्स कैन फॉर्म ए ग्रुप एंड वो कम रेट में भी उनका रिलेशन ज़्यादा आता, कम रेट में सस्ता में भी कंज्यूमर को मिलता, वो सूचना हम दिया था।
Well, moving on, leather tanneries have the reputation of being one of the biggest pollutants across the world, prompting civic authorities to shift them out of city limits. But relocation has not helped in Kanpur, with contaminated effluent water coming out of these factories and flowing into the Ganga. And rickety water treatment plants run by the municipal corporation are not helping the cause. Purva Chitnis finds out.
Sun rises over the Ganga, the calm we feel is shattered by the stench of garbage around us.
Kanpur's water is amongst the most polluted in urban India. Residents living close by the river Ganga often complain about the noxious odor and effluents. As you can see behind me, the water is not fit for consumption and is full of discharge.
टेंडे हैं जो वहाँ से आ रहा है पानी, और सुनवाई तो ये कभी हुई नहीं है, क्योंकि गंदगी यहाँ के घर वालों को देखिए कितनी गैस पड़ती है, उनके घर के बर्तन अर्तन काले हो जाते हैं, लोगों के पेट में भी गैस जा रही है।
ये ट्रीटमेंट का जितना सा पानी है सब इसी में आता है और इसी में जाता है, इसी में मिलता है, इसी में लोग नहाते हैं और यही समझिए बोरिंग होती है, यही लोग आदमी जो है यूज़ करके पानी पीते हैं। 50 करोड़ आदमी जो है यहाँ कानपुर का जो है बीमार पड़ा रहता है।
Apart from the local residents, the UP government too claims that the 400 tanneries are the main cause of pollution in the Ganga. Around 100 tanneries in Kanpur have already shut down as they did not meet the NGT's emission guidelines. Local tannery owners say they are willing to comply, but red tape is a big problem.
ये सन 96 में ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट जो चालू हुआ, अब वो क्योंकि 20 वर्ष पुराना हो गया तो हम लोगों ने सोचा कि इसको अपग्रेडेशन मॉडर्नाइजेशन होना चाहिए। करीब 10 डिपार्टमेंट हैं जो सिर्फ एफ्लुएंट की मॉनिटरिंग करते हैं, जैसे एक है नमामि गंगे, यूपी पॉल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड, सेंट्रल पॉल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड, नेशनल गंगा बेसिन रिवर अथॉरिटी, एनजीटी, यूपी जल निगम, नगर निगम और तमाम 10 विभाग हैं। तो सबसे पहले तो इन सब विभागों को एक करके आपस में समन्वय बने और एक विभाग एक इंडस्ट्री को मतलब देखे। अब हम लोगों को कभी कहीं से लेटर आ जाता है, कभी कहीं से आ जाता है, हम लोगों का आधा वक्त तो उसी में जवाब देते देते गुजर जाता है।
We live in this environment, we want this, we are breathing this air, we are drinking this water, so we as a citizen would like to have our air clean, our water clean, our river body Ganga river to be clean, we want our city to be clean, our country to be clean. There is certain capacity, certain constraints. We can only do to the extent we are able to do, or we are able to financially sustain. All these common effluent treatment plants have to be upgraded, and now how much government is going to support that we still do not know, but this is the project which we have to complete within 2 years.
Central Leather Research Institute also working on the new system on the effluent treatment plant, and they are giving us the assurance they will able to make the common treatment plants with the new technology where we should be able to achieve the norms and with the reasonable cost.
According to the guidelines, the water from the primary treatment center should be further treated at the common effluents plant before being discharged into the river. But a visit to the plant tells a different story.
फैक्ट्री वाला इतना दोषी नहीं जितना ये पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल बहुत दोषी है। ये यहाँ बगल में ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट है डीजल आता है, लाइट चली जाती है, डीजल तब बिक जाता है। ये हालात है, मोटर चलाते नहीं ना, डायरेक्ट गंगा बाईपास कर देते हैं।
ये ट्रेनरी से आ रहा है, वो गंगा जी जा रहा है, अगर इससे जाता है ये जो लगा हुआ है तो इससे वो प्लांट में जो है फिल्टर होता है, लेकिन उसमें नहीं है, डायरेक्ट खुला है आपके सामने। ये टूटा हुआ है तो डायरेक्ट बस वो जा रहा है गंगा जी में।
अगर गवर्नमेंट को हकीकत में गंगा साफ करना तो अपने कर्मचारियों पर थोड़ा सख्ती करनी पड़ेगी, वरना गंगा कोई दुनिया ताकत नहीं साफ कर सकती।
Okay, moving away from that, the much talked about Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor might finally be taking off. The rail corridor that can cut freight time between Delhi and Mumbai to 14 hours from 14 days is showing some signs of progress, but it might not be fast enough. The project that was planned almost a decade ago is still fraught with land acquisition hurdles. Jan Malo of Bloomberg News, who travelled to the small villages and towns situated along the proposed rail and road network, joins us now to tell us more. Jan, tell us, is this too little, too late? What will the government need to do to ensure this dream plan becomes a reality?
So we went out and visited India's $100 billion infrastructure project, one of its most ambitious projects, called the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. Now, the project is about a decade old, but there's finally been some progress on the ground. Me and my colleague Bibudata Pradhan went and visited a smart industrial city being built in Dholara in the western state of Gujarat, and also a dedicated freight corridor, a rail link that's linking Delhi and Mumbai. Now, after many delays over the years, the project is finally starting to see some progress. There's work on the ground, the freight line is going in, there's infrastructure being laid in Dholara. But despite that, there's still been a bunch of problems with the project. The governments are having a huge problem trying to get land from farmers in places where the farmers do want to sell the land. There's also an issue with the governments not having the funds available to actually pay them. So even though this project has seen a lot of progress, there's still some delays. And when this is a hugely ambitious project, so as soon as it's about a 30-year project, when India finally starts to see some of the gains come in for this project, you'll have these big industrial cities, purpose-built industrial corridors linking Delhi and Mumbai, where foreign investors or domestic businesses can come in and set up factories a lot easier than they could before in some of India's congested cities.
Well, Cyclone Oki today moved closer to the southern coast near Surat in Gujarat and is expected to make landfall in the state around midnight. As per the latest forecast released by the Meteorological Center, the cyclone is now just 390 kilometers away from Surat. The IMD has forecasted heavy rainfall at isolated places in Saurashtra and South Gujarat. Schools and colleges are shut in and around Mumbai, with instances of rainfall and hailstorm being reported around the area. Bloomberg Quinn spoke to GP Sharma, Vice President Meteorology and Climate Change at SkyMet, who said central and coastal Maharashtra need to be cautious. Listen in.
Late in the night, we can expect it to become even a deep depression and likely to cross coast of Gujarat. I will say anytime between sometime late in the evening to night, and most preferable area for crossing it should be close to Surat, and it could be anywhere between Bhavnagar and Surat. Maharashtra, obviously, particularly Mumbai, once the system moves further northeastward, it does not remain in a favorable zone any further thereafter to have some heavy rains.
Well, the government will announce the latest version of its foreign trade policy later today. The policy will come against the backdrop of weakness in exports and a surge in imports. While some of this is being seen as the temporary impact that demonetization and GST have had on supply chains, questions remain on whether these short-term issues will further weaken India's export competitiveness. Here's Unni Krishnan of Bloomberg News with all that can be expected from the review.
Essentially, I mean, basically looking out for three major points from the trade policy. Like you said, there's not much room in terms of hand-holding exporters right now. So the first thing the government is trying to do is possibly look at reviewing its informal target of about $900 billion of annual exports, both merchandise and services. There are various estimates out there that you possibly reach about 500 billion by the end of FY18. So essentially, you're nearly half the target, and things haven't really been bright globally, and you've seen merchandise exports remaining sluggish over the last couple of years. So that's the first big takeaway from the trade policy that we are expecting, that there will be some sort of a review. The guidance would possibly be lower than what you had set out at 900 billion for merchandise and services at the start of 2015. So that's the one big part. The other big part is that all this is coming in the backdrop of the problems faced by exporters by way of demonetization, and the second big shock that came to the system was of GST. So you would be possibly looking at some sort of incentives. Given the fiscal space, there isn't much the government can do, but in terms of some sort of incentives, may not be monetary incentives, but in terms of ease of doing business, there would be some sort of SOPs being given out to exporters. And finally, there will be a greater focus on Make in India, the complete value chain, if it can be done domestically without importing any raw products overseas. That's another part of the foreign trade policy that we're expecting in terms of Make in India, greater emphasis. And obviously the other usual suspects of finding newer markets, focus areas, where if you export more, possibly you'll get incentives in terms of import of capital equipment and measures like that.
Right, we'll have to wait and watch what the policy actually comes about today later in the evening. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Countdown. Thanks a lot for watching the show. It's goodbye from the entire team. Don't go anywhere. Coming up next is What Did You Miss?